Okay, I believe we're ready. It's 7:36, and I will entertain a motion to return to open session.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those opposed? If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Who seconded?
I believe, Greg did. Okay, the Lisle 202 mission statement is to provide our learning community with the essential education, skills, and experiences for future success. We'll keep those thoughts in mind as we meet this evening. Next is public comment, and I believe there's one public comment that was uploaded for our review at some point. And then we have one blue card this evening. Heidi, would you like to come down to the podium, please? Heidi Eklund. And Heidi, I don't know if you've spoken at board meetings before.
No.
We allow up to 3 minutes, and
Okay.
we'll give you a heads up when that time is about over, but otherwise, the board doesn't respond, but we certainly listen and we'll direct from there. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm coming to you guys this evening to bring to your attention that something that occurred last week at Lisle Elementary. I have 2 kids who are in older grades at the elementary school, and it was my 4-year-old's second day of pre-K on Wednesday. She was released from school at 11:15. She did not arrive home till 12:45. In that hour and a half, nobody could tell me where she was. Nobody could tell me what was going on. I kept getting the answers from Dr. Schreiber that the bus is on its way. The bus is 6 minutes away. The bus is 7 minutes away. The bus is 15 minutes away. The bus is at your location. I explained to her at that moment, I said, I am standing in the middle of Devon and Lacey, looking at Ogden and looking at Yackley, and there is no bus to be found. Nobody can tell me what occurred during that time frame. Nobody can tell me what transpired. I got a story from Dr. Schreiber that the bus was the wrong route given by the dispatch company. I was also told then by Mr. Wilkinson that the bus was running pickups and drop-offs like they normally do, as well as told by Dr. Schreiber that. And then I was told as well that they were going to be splitting the route. When I finally spoke to Dr. Schreiber again on Thursday morning, she said, "What are you talking about? The bus route's going to be split. I don't know what you're talking about." And I said, this is what was explained to me. Every answer or question I asked her in relationship to what happened, she told me, I'll have to look into it and get back to you. I still have yet to hear back from her. I then proceeded Thursday afternoon, Friday, I emailed the superintendent, who did not respond to me Thursday, did not respond to me Friday until Friday evening, and said, I will speak to Jill on Monday and get an answer for you, and we can set up a time to discuss it. I finally received an email back from him at 4 o'clock this afternoon with his explanation being that they were doing drop-offs and pickups at the same time, and I'm sorry you got the wrong information, was pretty much the moral of the story. And if I wanted to, I could set up a meeting with him and Dr. Schreiber. I've had multiple issues with Dr. Schreiber in the past 3 years in reference to 504, to anything, and I'm not getting resolution with her at all, and I just want to know what happened. I submitted for an FOIA in reference to the video from the bus, as well as to the detailed route explanation. I'm still waiting to hear on that. I know it takes 5 days, but I just want an answer to what happened. I am not the only one, that this has happened to. I posted on the mom's Facebook page, is this a normal thing? And there was multiple families who reached out to me saying one family had it happen 4 times in the school year, and she received no information at all. Not a pre-K student, but it's still happening, and they cannot give any explanation to me what is going on.
Okay, Heidi, the time is up, but
Yeah.
certainly we will ask that Dr. Filipiak look into it, not only look into it, figure out what happened, and set up a discussion with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming. Thank you. Okay, I don't think are there any more blue cards? Okay, that brings us to action items. Is there anything from item 7, which is our consent agenda, that anyone would like to discuss further before we vote? Okay, if not, I will entertain a motion to approve the item 7A consent agenda, 7A1 board meeting minutes, 7A2 payroll pay orders, 7A3 vendor pay orders, 7A4 personnel, 7A4A certified employment, 7A4B certified leave request, 7A4C certified resignation, 7A4D classified employment, 7A4E classified leave request, 7A4F classified resignation, 7A4G administrative employment, 7A4H extra duty recommendation, 7A4I non-bargaining unit resignation, and I believe, 7A5 designation of persons to prepare tentative budget for fiscal year 2026, 7A6 resolution authorizing the sale of personal property, and 7A7 authorization to release closed session minutes for public inspection and destruction of audio recordings. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Nagler?
Aye.
Mr. Helderly?
Aye.
Ms. Foster?
Aye.
Ms. DiDomenico?
Aye.
Mr. Lesniak?
Aye.
Ms. Sims is an aye, and Ms. Ullman?
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Sims. Okay, item 8 is the financial information. The board acknowledges receipt of the following reports: 8A, financial report; 8B, treasurer's report; 8C, investment concentration and collateral report, 12/31/2024. Any discussion, any concerns with those reports? Okay, as presented then. And item 9 is our discussion items. And we'll introduce for the progress report on the new junior high math curriculum implementation. So come on down. Well, thank you for coming back.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. We are very grateful in the opportunity to share with you how we are doing so far with the implementation of Eureka Squared this year and how our students are doing. If you can, the table of contents, we're going to start off. Mr. Erickson's going to talk briefly about our IAR results from last fall that we shared, or sorry, from last spring that we shared in the fall. Along with how we have done comparable to the other districts in the area. And then we will be going into showing you what we are doing to prepare our students for this spring's IAR test, including, again, the implementation of Eureka Squared and what we've noticed so far through that, how we can motivate our students and how we have been motivating our students throughout the year for them to have the ability to best show what they know and have learned. And then Mrs. Norwood will go into a little bit about how we've done so far this year as we concluded first semester about a few weeks ago.
All right, thank you again for having us back and giving us the opportunity to share the progress so far this year. We definitely are excited about some of what we will be able to share with you this evening. Sorry. So to start with, just as Mr. Carney said, just a reminder of what we shared with you in the fall from our spring IAR, looking at how our cohorts had been performing. These are the current 7th and 8th and 9th graders based on the data from this past spring. What we were obviously wanting to see, and know Dr. Flipiak has mentioned this before too, is, trending upwards obviously, but also getting to the point where at least as an initial goal to get every grade level in both ELA and math to that 50% meeting or exceeding and beyond. Again, an initial goal, obviously we want to continue to grow from there. Unfortunately, and we talked about this in the fall, we are seeing the downward trend with our current 8th graders, slipping to just 37% meeting or exceeding last spring on their math portion. So we definitely want to sort of be able to highlight throughout this presentation some of the positives and good things that we're seeing this year, making us hopeful that they will definitely show considerable improvement this spring. So looking at the district comparisons, as Mr. Carney mentioned, just choosing the districts that I believe Dr. Filipiak has shared with before, surrounding districts, and in comparison to their overall performance, looking at the average on the far right, and then looking at our highlighted percents in the middle there from this past spring. We saw that our 6th graders were just short of the average. Again, not to that 50% mark that we have as a goal, but not too far off the average of the surrounding districts. The 8th graders were right at that average and also above the 50% mark. So again, seeing good things there. But as we pointed out on the last slide, seeing that our 7th grade from last year, so our current 8th graders, and not only were they considerably below that 50% mark, which happens to be the average, but being even below 40% and the lowest amongst this group, we definitely wanted to target that and target their improvement, and again are feeling good about what we have been able to do so far with that. So taking a look at our plan for IR success here. So in order for our students to be successful, all students to be successful on the IR, in this case focusing on math, we know first of all that they have to understand the content. They have to know what the content of the test is in terms of their grade level learning standards in mathematics. Number 2, they need to be familiar with the assessment format, and we'll talk more about this, but a math curriculum could do a great job of presenting, which I do believe our revamped Eureka Math with Eureka Math Squared, I do believe it does a great job of presenting the grade level content and the expected learning standards. But those standards, those learning expectations can be assessed in a variety of ways, and how a program like Eureka Math Squared chooses to do that might not be exactly like IR chooses to do that. So it's important for them to not only be familiar or to know the content, but also in this case be familiarized with what it is going to look like when they face or when they are expected to show what they've learned on the IR. And then number 3, we know they need to be motivated. It's great if they know the content and if they're familiar with the platform, but if they're not also motivated to do their best and show what they're capable of, the other 2 can unfortunately go to waste. So as we look at each one of these in more detail, starting with knowing the content, again, this is just a sort of a review of what we talked about in the fall. Eureka Math has always been very rigorous, and that hasn't changed, but with the rollout of Eureka Math Squared and our implementation of it this year, a couple of the main reasons we chose that are highlighted here on this slide. Just to clarify the first one, because I believe there were some questions that had been shared with us, and hopefully those are getting answered, but please let us know if they're not, and we'll follow up on that. But when we talk about redesigned lessons, sometimes we use the word lesson to refer to just the day's lesson, what you accomplish in a class period. But also when you're talking about a curriculum, a lesson might refer to something that could extend over multiple class periods. So in this case, in the original Eureka Math, a lesson was designed to actually take approximately 75 minutes. It was really designed more for a block schedule as the ideal setting for the original Eureka Math program. Eureka Math Squared, though, has taken the approach of streamlining the lessons and the modules so that a lesson can be accomplished in more of a traditional class period. And then also the units, or they call them modules themselves, were also streamlined so that it would fit better within a traditional school year. So just making that shift in how they have organized the lessons and the grade level content is allowing us to cover more content than we have in the past, so that our students are exposed to more of the content they're going to see on state testing when it comes to demonstrating what they know and are able to do with their grade level standards in math. Also, we highlighted the fact that part of that redesign, the way we expressed it here was a focus less on reading and more on math skills. And again, just to clarify, one of the sticking points or downsides that some people would say from the original Eureka Math is that, yes, it was rigorous, but sometimes the reading was a barrier for the learning of the math. So there'd be long, complex story problems where the reading difficulty was at a point where even if the student understood the grade level math content, they couldn't understand the way it was expressed in that problem based on the reading that it required. Also, they would have multiple parts to one question that would sort of complicate the matter as well, and sort of shift the focus away from actually being able to demonstrate their math knowledge and ability. So that is something, again, that Eureka took upon themselves with the rollout of Eureka Math Squared to redesign their lessons, the problem sets, the assessments, to write those questions in a way that it was more focused on the content, on the math that they want the students to be able to demonstrate that they've learned, and not have that barrier of the complexity of the question or the reading required to keep them from being able to demonstrate what they know about the math. Yes.
Yeah, so in both these points are basically Eureka redesigned their curriculum.
Yes.
It fits better our schedule, and the questions, again, it's not that we're focusing less on reading, which means, like, my question was, well, I don't want our ELA IR to go down, right?
Right.
So this is really adjusting the redesign of Eureka and us adjusting to that.
Correct. And then stressing how it's benefiting us to be able to get through more of the content, to have our students better prepared for the state assessment.
Tor, it might be a good time to remind us what year are we in on Eureka Squared?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that question. We went back just to double check to make sure we had it right. 2018-19 was our first year of Eureka Math. Mm-hmm. So I believe that was, if I count correctly, but I think that was 7 years with just the original Eureka Math program, and now this is our first year with Eureka Math Squared. It has been released the Eureka Math Squared has been released for a couple of years now, but we didn't want to be one of the early adopters. We wanted to make sure it was, working how they wanted to, especially with a lot of the online tools that were updated. It's sometimes nice to just wait and make sure it's worth making the shift. And in this case, we felt like it was time to do that. And just as a follow-up to that too, the elementary school was on a similar time frame, but where a year before us, actually, so the 17-18 school year was when they rolled out Bridges, which is similar in some ways to its setup with Eureka Math, with the workbook format and everything, and the rigor. Unfortunately, it stops at 5th grade, so we did need to adopt something other than Bridges for the middle school, and we felt like at that time that Eureka Math was the best fit, and I think it's definitely been beneficial, but again, we're excited even more so about what we're seeing with the Eureka Math Squared.
Another question. So what's the learning curve for our teachers to go from Eureka Math to Eureka Math Squared? My concern is whenever we shift curriculum, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems it takes 3-4 years for that to really start having a permanent effect on the achievement of our students. So is there a way that it will be shortened because it's still Eureka, or getting to, can we see the results I love it next semester, but next in years, we're going to see that steady permanently that uptick in the student achievement.
Right. Obviously, I would love to promise that it will be immediate, but I think it will definitely be sooner than if we were rolling out an entirely different program. As you said, it's still the same. it's still the same level of rigor. It's still covering the same content, using the same approaches. Our math teachers did have extensive training when we initially rolled out the Eureka Math, because it was quite a shift in our practices, even instructionally. That is not really the case this time. Again, it's a lot more streamlining, redesigning, but still implementing it using the skills that our teachers learned previously, and really following a similar format to what our students are used to too with the workbooks. It's just we're able to work through the lessons and the modules at a better pace to be able to get through what we need to for grade level content.
Great, thank you.
I think I covered that. So then the next step after making sure we know the content would be being familiar with the IR assessment format. As I said earlier, and again, continue to reiterate, Eureka Math Squared has done a lot of great things to revamp their approach and maintain the rigor, but it might not look, how they assess might not look exactly like IR will be assessing. So to make sure that we're addressing that, we have built a couple things in. First of all, iReady as a platform, which we use on a weekly basis, and this year as a whole school, we went to extended homerooms on Wednesdays for that purpose, to be able to get more practice with our iReady individualized learning pathways. Just to make sure we're all on the same page. On our normal school day, we have 19 minutes for homeroom. It's just the way it works out with the passing periods and everything, so just short of 20 minutes. On the extended homeroom days now, every Wednesday, it's almost double that. We have 37 minutes. So again, a much longer stretch of time where the students can really get into the learning on the iReady platform, where they have their individual pathways that are generated for them based on how they do on their diagnostics throughout the year. The focus of January, as we sort of ramp up towards IR, is the continued work on those individual learning pathways in both reading and math. But as we get into February and March, we're getting more specific in our practice. So another tool that iReady has is what they call their standards mastery checks. These are specifically designed to address all the grade level standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but the questions are designed as an IR question would be designed. IR basically has two different types of questions, and that's what the graph on the side there is. They have their multiple choice, the drag and drop, and various types of, we'll say, short response or chosen response type questions, and that makes up about 60% of the math test. So when our students are doing these iReady standards mastery checks, they're getting the practice with that portion of the IR assessment and being able to apply what they've been learning in the grade level coursework. With the other 40%, an additional part of what we're going to be practicing in February and March is more specific practice on what we'll call math essay questions. They're called extended response on IR, and it does make up about 40% of their final score. And similar to what we saw on the ELA side with IR, our teachers made a big push to focus on essay writing last year, and that's continued into this year. And again, we're seeing the benefits of that, and we saw specifically in that essay writing portion of our IR scores last year saw a huge jump. On the math side, similarly, we've noticed that that is an area that our students score low on. It could be that they didn't realize that they're supposed to actually use complete sentences and lay out their responses in more of an essay format, which is why we are definitely targeting that skill and making that something that we practice specifically as we prepare for IR. Our teachers also incorporate that into their Eureka Math Squared lessons, though. A common word added on to the end of a problem or phrase in Eureka Math is explain your reasoning, or explain your steps, or explain your thought process. So that is something that they have to do, and our teachers, have various ways of breaking that down for them, where they'll say, what was your first step? Write it out in a complete sentence. Why did you do that? Write that in a complete sentence. So they are getting that kind of guided practice in class as well. But what we're doing specifically in this time is that targeted, more extended response practice. And then I think that covered that pretty much. The last step to being successful, as we said, is that they are motivated to do their best and show us what they're capable of. And Mr. Carney is going to take that one.
And at the middle school level, that is always a challenge, making sure our students are motivated to do their best. We started off with the pre-ACT because we are talking a lot about our 8th graders. And our 8th graders, that's their first test that they'll take in the series leading up to their ACT. They'll take their junior year of high school. So we started off prior to them taking the test. We did have the high school came over, Mrs. Irvine, Mrs. Meyer, and Mrs. Zimmerman came over to speak with the 8th graders. We brought them all in the auditorium. And they kind of just discussed what the test was, why they're taking it, why it's important, what it's used for, why it's important for them to look for, going ahead. And I could not be more proud of how our 8th graders have responded. You'll hear some of the results, but they did a tremendous job on the pre-ACT. They've been doing a tremendous job all year and all the things that we've done. The second thing, looking at the I-Ready reflection and goal setting, I have to give a huge shout out to Dr. Slowiak. He's not here with us tonight, but he put in a tremendous amount of work with our students, developing the reflection sheets and goal setting sheets that we utilized in homeroom to go over them with students so they can intrinsically get motivated and buy in on how they're doing and reflect on not only how they did, but what they did to prepare for their test to see if they did everything that they needed to do, how it results, set goals for the future. And we didn't want to just random goals, looking at a 7th grader, 6th grader, just randomly coming out with a number, what they think their goal is, so explain to them, what their score was in the fall, what it's a typical growth, looking at going into winter, and kind of analyzing how they feel that they can do, set the goal, and then after they scored on their winter test, then have a reflection sheet again saying, did they eat properly beforehand, they get enough sleep, what are they looking at doing in the spring to even improve more. And again, Dr. Slowiak took a lot of time doing that. One of the, downfalls isn't the right word, but I-Ready that we are extremely pleased with, but they do not give historical charts for the students, so Dr. Slowiak had to individually create one for every one of the students. And then he, in his own time, plotted everybody's goal on the sheet. Dr. Slowiak and I went back and forth about, I thought the students should plot the results because I wanted them to take ownership in what they were doing or the goal. He wanted us to do it because he wanted the students to know that we were looking at everything and applying it. So then he actually went to one of the 8th grade students who gave us great feedback and said, well, why don't you plot the goals, knowing that you guys are looking at our goals, but then we plot how we did and then draw a graph. So shout out to that 8th grade student. I'm not going to give him by name, but hopefully she's watching. She gave us that information. And again, just a lot of that goes into motivating the students. And then celebrating progress throughout the performance of the school year so far. So again, I'm so proud of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for everything they've done in the fall. I mean, it's a lot of work that they put in. A lot of time in homeroom, a lot of time in their classes to prepare for the I-Ready they took in the winter. Results obviously are paying off for us, so the work that they were doing is benefiting. But so we decided to do an ice cream party for them as we got back after winter break, just to kind of celebrate. Usually we do that at the end of our I-Ready challenge, but again, we felt that it was something that they deserved early on, and obviously through announcements and different types of things. Looking at the I-Ready Set Goal Challenge that goes through the spring, preparing for our IAR testing. We are changing kind of how it worked. Before it was pretty much a three-month process. We wanted to break it down to smaller chunks, so it's a monthly reward that we've combined with our Pride team and our monthly thing that we do at the extended homeroom in the last homeroom of the month. And then kind of building off of that. Just doing different types of activities within that time. There's bingo, escape rooms, and different things that students participate if they meet their goal of getting 2 math I-Ready lessons and 2 reading. I will be honest, I've been seeing this for my 30-some years in education. January and February seems to be a time that students aren't as motivated. So we have seen a little decline in the amount of students that are participating in the I-Ready lessons. So now we're looking at this last week on Wednesday, we did a secret students reward, meaning we just randomly picked one student in 6th grade, one in 7th grade, and one in 8th grade. And if they completed a lesson during that Wednesday block, then everybody in that grade level received either 1 point or 2 points, depending on which lesson it was. And then 6th and 7th grade were successful. 8th grade was not the first week, but I'm sure they will be this week. And then we celebrate the students who did who didn't meet that goal for the grade level, I do let everybody know who that is, so then all the kids can congratulate them. I do not say who the eighth grader for this time was an eighth grade student, so I do not call them out, which the sixth graders reported to me that I was very nice for doing that. So, so we're going to continue doing things and obviously modify things as we go through, because it is a long stretch until March when we do take the test. But again, I could not be more proud of what they've done so far, our teachers, students, and everybody. It's really been a group effort. And again, Dr. Slowiak's been amazing, and I feel really good at where we're at this time of year.
Dave, was this the first year for the pre-ACT pep talk from the high school? That's a good initiative.
Obviously, it's the ACT switch from the SAT,
Right.
but yes, and the way that was presented it was definitely different. We're looking at, wanting the students to know why everything's important, why, individually it's important to them. And how it's going to progress as they get to their junior year. So they spend a lot of time, again, just talking about the test. Obviously not trying to put stress on the students, saying it's just the beginning of the stage. You're going to learn as you go. It's practice tests, but why it's important, what they use at the high school for placement purposes and different things. But just to get that buy-in, I think, again, students responded really well. They asked a lot of questions. And then when we handed out the results, they were definitely taking it seriously. It was... I don't know even how to explain it. It was very talkative in the hallways after they got the results back, and again, they were just excited for how they did and had questions, how they can improve, which is always great to hear. So.
There was a summary in the last month's superintendent's report of the winter iReady diagnostics, and it helps to have you expound on it a little bit, but talking about the day of reflection and getting the students to take ownership, that seems like another really good initiative to get them to buy in. So, thank you.
So I'm going to talk about a couple of, I think, celebrations that we've come across as we're looking at all of our results. So pre-ACT, like we said, is new to us. We had PSAT in the past. And so we had a really great performance overall by eighth graders. According to the results that we got, 74% of our eighth graders are on target for college and career readiness, which is awesome. It's a different cut score for each subsection of the PSAT. And so overall, we're doing really well. Just to piggyback on that, only 4% of our students were designated as in need of intervention. So there's on target for college and career readiness, there's approaching, and then there's in need of intervention. And only 4% of our eighth graders were designated as needing intervention, and they are all currently receiving interventions. So we were really proud of the fact that we've identified these students and we're giving them what they need, hopefully, in order to be more successful. In terms of our iReady winter diagnostic, looking at the whole school, the percentage of students performing at or above grade level increased by 7%. And then the percentage of students performing 2 or more years below decreased by 5%. When we took a look at just our eighth grade class, there was a 12% increase on students performing at or above grade level. So it went from 41% of our eighth graders to 53% of our eighth graders. And then there was a 10% decrease on the students that were 2 or more grade levels below. So we went from 25% of our student body being 2 or more grade levels below down to 15%. And so we saw those colors and those numbers shifting in the direction that we wanted them to go. Just a couple of other things that we've done. iReady, one of the nice features of iReady is that it will alert students during the test that they are rushing, but they will also alert the teachers afterwards that they are rushing. You can receive a yellow flag for rushing a little bit and a red flag for rushing a lot of it. And we did have conversations with those students. Many of the students who received a red flag were disappointed in how they performed and actually came to us to say, I wasn't in the right frame of mind, I didn't do my best, I was feeling some kind of way, which happens with junior high students. And so we allow them to retake the diagnostic if they so choose. But we did have conversations with those students that received a yellow or a red flag and didn't choose to retake it to say, well, because you have done differently, this is what the yellow or the red flag tells us as a district. We did a lot when we were talking with the students ahead of time. And again, one of the downfalls, I don't know if you all had students, I'm sure I'm looking at some of you who had students that took the MAP test. And so there was that grid in the corner of their percentile and how it changed over time. That's one of the downfalls of iReady. It doesn't show that. And so again, when Dr. Slowiak plotted each individual student and they were able to see a graph, not even just the little sidebar that MAP gave us, but they were really able, we had one 8th grade student who was like, I'm going backwards. And we said, yes, you are, and you're capable of so much more. You're in honors classes, and you're pushed up in math. And he was like, okay, I got this, and completely changed the way he looked at the test, the way he approached the test, the way he prepared for the test. And so that's what we wanted to see a lot with our 8th graders, and I think by our 12% increase, many of our students are meeting their end-of-year typical growth, and we still have 50% of the year left. So this...
A question on that.
Go ahead.
Great. So going back to, I guess, slide 4, we've got that where our current 8th graders have gone down to 37%. So we're reversing that now, right? If I sum that up?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And then I did have a question back on that slide. On the 74% of the 8th graders on target for college, is there a correlation between that and then on Eleanor report card, there is a 9th graders on target?
Sure.
And we've been, since 2020, we've been above 90%, which is awesome. I just want to show this is supporting that, because then if we can push that even more, so.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Great.
No, we did pull together some of that information for you. If we're looking at the same thing and based on the numbers, I think we are, that 9th grade on track information on the school report card is referring to being on track for high school graduation. Versus this being a college and career readiness measure in a specific content area on top of that. So I think it would be hard to make any kind of direct correlation. I think that obviously they need to pass their math classes to graduate. So we are seeing that high, like you said, 90+ percentile of our students being on track for meeting their high school graduation requirements. But I think it's unfortunately, because also ACT has a much different way of calculating college and career readiness than even SAT. We're going to need a few years to get some trend data on that. This 74%, for example, is considerably higher than even some of our recent strong classes for their college and career readiness on PSAT 8-9. But again, their formula for calculating that is slightly different, if that makes sense. So it's based on the same idea of what are the chances that this student will be able to, once they get to their freshman year of college, be able to earn a C or better on that content area, in that content area course for their first semester. So at least college and our college board, the SAT and the ACT, agree on what they mean by college and career readiness. It's just, again, the way they calculate those percentages are slightly different. So,
and it just, we know that better prepared our students are leaving 8th grade, the better they will start high school. It's all, it builds prior
yes.
year, you build on the prior year. So it was just interesting because this is the 70% is really, really great. Plus, I think you said 4% it would be 4% that need intervention, which is like 4 students, 4 or 5 students, and which means the remaining percentage, that's 12%, are the ones that are approaching. So.
Right, and I think there was a question on what that group was designated as. So for the students that don't meet, but are not in the intervention group, the ones that they call close to on target, so they're saying that they have a less than a 50% chance of earning a C on that freshman course, but better than a 25% chance. So that's how they designate that bar or that portion of the students.
So we got, actually, my math is 22% that are approaching.
Yes.
So are we doing anything for that 22% to get them over that edge?
So a lot of what we have gone through in this presentation is really
Okay.
intervening for all the students when it comes to the more targeted individual needs. That's where the individual learning pathway helps a lot. But again, I think the specific efforts that we're making with this iReady Set Go challenge, where we not only getting the individual practice on their learning pathway, but also the targeted IAR type question practice is going to be something that's benefiting all of our students.
Benefiting all, and the 22%, hopefully that pushes them up.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And just to piggyback on that, we have more than 4% of our students in an intervention now. So if I had to go back and look at the students that we have in intervention and the students that fell either within that 22% or that 4%, I would think there's a pretty high correlation there.
Yeah.
We were digging into the data earlier today, and I looked at the, 1 percentage point is pretty much one student. And so that we looked at the 4 students that were considered needing intervention, and they're in a wide variety of interventions based on their needs. So, like I said, I would venture to guess if I looked at those other 22 students, quite a few of them are caught in some of our different intervention nets.
Great, thank you.
Just looking at our iReady individual growth by this time of year, you can see in this graph here the cohorts of students. So 6th graders move along diagonally on the blue. So our 6th graders, our current 8th graders who were in 6th grade in 2022 at this point of the school year, 31% of them had met their typical growth. Right now, we have 56% that are meeting their typical growth, and we're only halfway through the year. So that's wonderful. That means many of our students are going to have a shot at meeting their stretch growth. Again, just a reminder with stretch growth, it's a lofty but attainable goal that if students meet their stretch growth for 3 years in a row, they will potentially have closed the gap between how they're performing and same-aged peers in the norms. And so those are some of our kids that we're looking at 2 and 3 grade levels below. We want as many of those students as possible to meet their stretch growth so that we can get everybody, up to where our grade level standards are. So again, we are really excited to see that many of our students have met their typical growth, and we have half a year left where we have a lot of other initiatives that we're working on, including, like as Tor said, our IAR practice and getting them familiar with the format and how the questions are worded, but also continuing to work on their learning path, because again, the point of the learning path is to take an individual student and fill in any of their gaps in mastery. So it could be working on an 8th grader could be working on a 6th grade skill, but in one specific domain to fill that in, and so they're going to be ready for the pre-algebra and algebra that they're working on in 8th grade.
If you don't mind me adding one more just little data piece to highlight, again, how impressed we are with this current 8th grade group for what they've shown us so far this year. At the end of last year, there were 46% of that group of students that had met their math typical growth. And again, as Ms. Norwood pointed out, we're already at 56% just midway through the year. So they've already greatly exceeded what they did by the end of year last year, just at the midway point this year. So again, as she's saying, just very pleased to see that and know that they still have this additional time here to grow even more.
Excellent.
That's the conclusion of our slide deck, but I know there were quite a few other questions that you had, and we've taken some time to really dig into the data and answer any of those questions. Is there anything that you wanted us to go through while we're sitting in front of you?
Just for clarification, that 37%, that's representative of a different data point than what we're seeing up there, correct? That's their growth, and that was their percent meets?
Correct. The 37% was the percent of students that met or exceeded on the spring testing as 7th graders. This is showing the growth that they have demonstrated so far this school year on iReady. So, I mean, it's promising that they will, that will carry over into, significant improvement on IAR, but we, won't be able to say that until we have taken the IAR this spring.
Okay, and that's just every spring we take that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
You answered my questions, but Dan, you had some, but I think
Yes, absolutely.
several were answered.
Yeah, you answered many of them. Thank you so much. In the linked assessment data on the winter math 7th grade, I'm not sure if you want to bring that up, but I see a significant decrease in the red from 15 down to 12, but then the pinkish goes 6 to 12, but then I just want to confirm, there's a big shift upward. And I think I have the questions, like, for the ones that were, 3 or more grade levels, did they all just move into that 2 grade levels before? So if you can speak to some of that movement of students between those gradients.
Sure. So we looked at individual students today, and there were several students that moved up from the either dark red or pink into the yellow, some of them into the green. There were some that moved backwards, which we've seen, not very many, again, or else our numbers would have looked much different. But we also had new students, and that was actually, when you asked that question, I was like, gosh, that's really good information. So we had new students that did not take the fall diagnostic that moved into our district and are throwing off our percentages a little bit because, again, one student is 1 percentage point at that grade level. And so I would love to tell you that they all shifted in the direction that we want, but I just can't say that because the data is kind of all over the place. As I was looking for new students, we also had a couple of students that didn't finish the winter diagnostic. One of them had a concussion, another one is not present in the building. So all of those little things, when you have such a small building, they shift your percentages a lot. But the great news is, yes, we had quite a few that moved from either the dark red and the pink up into the yellow and the green areas, which is exactly what we want to see.
And it was even more pronounced in the winter math 8th grade, and so I really like those 2 graphs because they're really visually seeing that there is a upward movement. So thank you for putting that together.
Any other questions?
I just wanted to say thank you for putting this together because I know it's like an additional presentation than in years past, but it really, I think, highlights the promise. And I know it's a huge lift, not just to put this together, but for all the things that you're putting into place to get the kids what they need. So thank you for all of that.
And kudos for the winter 8th grade increase. I mean, that's fantastic. Anybody else have anything? Okay.
I think we've got a great opportunity with the team here to talk about cell phones, so we're just going to have them stay for a few more minutes as we go
Okay.
through the cell phone policy.
All right.
Lucky you.
So with that segue, we will go to item 9B on the agenda, which is student handbooks, board policy, student access to mobile phones. Do you want to start it off? or-
Sure. One of the things we talked about as a board a number of months ago is you read more and more in the paper about some school districts taking it to the extreme and saying, do not bring your cell phone, or if you are to bring your cell phone, we'll have lockers. You're going to put them in those lockers, and you'll get them at the end of the day. And so I would say that's kind of the extreme. I know when my own kids were younger, I would often get frustrated because they'd come home and talk about how things change because of a few students making a bad decision, and so they might have, had lost an opportunity to do something because a few students couldn't make good choices. And so when we put together this policy, one of the things we're trying to do is balance between, what are we seeing from most students, what are we seeing from many students, and what are we seeing from some students. And so I think the teachers often feel like it's frustrating to have cell phones available. As much as we want to tell students, we don't want to see them, keep them in your bag, we don't want to have to monitor where they are, let's try and be professional. There are occasions, quite frequently, where students just are so into their phones that they will pull it out. And so the staff tries to do a really good job focusing on just those students who make those bad choices. I outlined in the information you have for today, what does that look like? It's different at the junior high versus the high school. At the elementary, and talking to Dr. Schreiber, it's rare that we have any issues out there, and so really it's a junior high and high school approach. And so at the junior high, they're almost to the point of this extreme of saying, don't bring your phones. There's an expectation at the beginning of the day, you put it in your backpack or wherever that might be, and we don't expect to see it unless for some reason we ask you to take it out. But it's pretty much, you can hold on to it, we just don't want to see it. And there are some students who don't follow that, and then there are ramifications, but as you saw the different ramifications, it starts with an after-school detention for the first 2 violations. After that, then we get your parents involved, and it's the parent will come out, they have to get their student's phone back. We'll have some conversations about how can we work with your student. Maybe your student shouldn't bring their cell phone. You do understand if this happens again. And so once it gets, unfortunately, to that level, which is rare, we see students to be able to follow the direction. But those are very few students that get to that level. The other thing that the junior high has done a great job in doing is having the phones not out even during passing period or lunches. And so they've given me the feedback that students wind up having to almost interact instead of just sitting there on their phones. And so there's been positives at that level. When we talked about that at the high school level, I don't think those students are ready for that level of non-phone use. And so at the high school level, they're allowed to bring their phones. We expect not to see their phones, but during passing periods, during lunches, we do allow for them to use their phones. In general, most students follow the rules. In general, there's probably reminders at every classroom every single day. Of course, there's staff that would love for us to eliminate the phones, but I don't think that's where we are. And I do think we're seeing the vast majority of students following the rules. And so I don't think we're there yet. It's not to say we won't get to that point or that a lot of schools will change how they handle things, but I think Lisle School District, the students, most students are responsive to the directions we give them. So we are looking to maintain our current handbooks and policy. We got some feedback from board members that said, you may want to make this consistent, you may want to change these words, and so we're going to take a lot of that feedback that we got, which was all good to kind of better align, but in general, I think we felt like the policies are reflective of what we would like to continue to do. Anything to add?
Can I ask, because it was, I think that's clarified now. It was my understanding from the junior high policy, they could not use their cell phone class time from 7:55 to 3. But then I'd heard, or was getting the impression that they could use it in the halls and cafeterias, so.
No, yeah, they're not allowed to use it
Okay.
any time during the day unless somebody gives them permission to. So sometimes if a practice is canceled, I'll give students on the basketball team an okay to text home, let them know the practice was canceled. We do tell them at lunchtime that would be the time to ask us, and they would come up and say, can I text my mom, and we'll let them do it in front of us, and then they put the phone away and go back. So they're not allowed to just have them out at any time.
Is it difficult to monitor in the hall, or in the lunchroom, if that's the situation? Or you said there, I know earlier in the year you said the benefits where the kids were talking to each other, which is terrific.
I don't see a huge issue with the issue that we have is the bathrooms. That's the one part because they're not as monitored as much as everywhere else. Hallways, we have supervision teachers in the hallways. We don't see cell phones out too often, but it's when student leaves class to go to the bathroom, or sometimes when they're in the bathroom in a passing period, they'll use it, which of course is against our rule, policy, and legally it's against the law. So that's the only issue that we have with cell phones.
And I think a couple of us had questions on do the teachers feel that they're causing disruption in the classroom, or Paula, you had that question as well.
I can speak a little bit just because when students use their cell phone throughout the school day, I'm the one who assigns the consequences. I would say maybe 2 to 3% of our population is to the point where I've had to involve parents. Other than that, students, primarily they get caught with their cell phone once and they're like, no more. We say off and away during the school day, as Mr. Carney said, if somebody has an emergency or they're like, my mom texted me and I don't know what it's about, can I please check my phone? We always allow that if it's at an appropriate time, not in the middle of science class, usually at lunch or at the end of a passing period or something like that. They're so regimented with this rule. I've had kids come up to me and say, I got a puppy for Christmas. Can I please take out my phone and show you the pictures of my puppy? So they're pretty compliant at this age. Again, the cell phones in the bathroom seems to be the biggest problem. And to be honest, I have that same problem when I'm at the gym sometimes. I'm like, don't take out your cell phone while I'm here. People are so ingrained in having their cell phones. But we address it as it comes up. And again, it's been a very small percentage of our population. Teachers automatically, if they see a cell phone out, it goes through my desk. It's very infrequent. I can't even really think of maybe 2 occasions this year where it was a student taking it out in the middle of class. It's much more during the hallway or something like that. So it hasn't been a barrier to learning, in my opinion.
Okay. And I know I had a lot of comments for consistency, but I thought some of those, like listing out the 5 times that they can't use, I think that's an important thing to include in there. And then I didn't know about the one generic paragraph about the school officials may conduct an investigation. That seemed like it was legal language that needed to be put in. It was in LES and in the senior high, so I appreciate that. And one thing with that I thought that maybe as a board, this kind of started with looking at a board policy or whatever, so I would propose that we would take the language that the schools use and put it into board policy to say that it's up to the discretion of the administrator, the teacher, or staff personnel, and then list the reasons, or list some of the things that the 5 items that were listed both in the LES handbook and then in the high school. And so if we had that in policy, it would support what you're doing. So I did a draft, but we wouldn't be looking at it now, but if the board was supportive of that, we could, have something we could bring back for first reading and look at it. And it would just be basically taking the language from the student handbooks and not imposing any limitations that you don't have in place already. But I think that might help you a little bit, because we often, if we get questions, refer to board policy, and it would be good if you think that we should do that. Because the exceptions are using the device to take photographs in a locker room or bathroom, which we already have, cheating, creating, sending, sharing, viewing, receiving, or possessing an indecent visual depiction, using the device in the hallway, bathrooms, and or common areas during class period, and then using the device during any loss of privilege time, including detentions and in-school suspensions. So it's allowing it in emergency situations if it impacts the student or the school. So if that's something the board would want to consider and you feel that would be helpful.
So Pam, I know you had a number of suggestions, and myself, we could work with Dr. Katalik to come up with a first draft.
Okay.
Okay.
And I guess the only other one that, it would be great with feedback from you, but would, using the device to take, display, or send images without permission, would that, I think in the current filtering era, that might be a helpful one to add to that, so. The board's
We
agreement.
call it a cell phone policy, but there's a lot of devices now. Like, for this policy, say, don't take your cell phone out. What about the kids who happen to have a smartwatch or some sort, which is basically, they get all the messaging there, they can do short. Is that also covered in the referrals for detention and all that? Because it's still just, it's a device. It's a communication device. So.
We haven't had as much trouble with smartwatches. I think by way of you can somehow make them not chirp all day long. I don't have one, so I'm not well versed on how to use it, but we haven't had a problem. In the very beginning of iWatches or Fitbits or Garmin's or things like that, when the kids didn't know how to properly use them, we had a little bit of an issue, but it seems to have been done at this point. I haven't gotten a single referral this year on a smartwatch, so they're either using them appropriately or have them silenced during the school day. In terms of other devices, the kids aren't really carrying around iPads or anything like that. I'm trying to think of other devices where you could like record or take pictures or things like that. It really seems to be the phones that are, if being used inappropriately, it seems to be cell phones only.
I'm just thinking for our language for this to be more inclusive of devices, whether it's a cell phone, a watch, a tablet, it's really all the same thing. It's a mobile device or Wi-Fi or mobile, and it has pictures, and you can be distracted and do disruptive activity with it. So it's something I think when we look at the language to make sure we're really inclusive, whatever the next thing is, smart glasses or whatever might be coming up, so.
And there's language from the high school and the elementary on what is a device, electronic device, which just use that language, and I think it's the language that you you adhere to, you just don't maybe have it in as explicit, so, okay. Well, if that'll help you, we'll do that. I think it would help the board to understand.
Pam and Dan, just for the wording with the video recording, Illinois is a dual consent state, so regardless of the device the recording's on, there's Illinois General Assembly law that it's unlawful to record someone without their consent in the state of Illinois. So I think reference to that, regardless of where it is in the building, we have to be within state law, so we're completely supported.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Kate.
Okay, any other questions from the board or any? Thank you. Thanks for staying for the bonus there. Dr. Filipiak, do you want them to handle the superintendent's report or you? Okay, that brings us to item 9C, which is the progress report on superintendent's areas of focus. Pardon me? I had student handbooks, and then I'm looking. No, that's the next one. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I included in the board information a summary of an update of where I am today. Were there any specific questions that I didn't address in my update?
No, we had a big update on the cell phone policy, so.
Team effort.
Yeah, and Vision 202 is tomorrow, so first meeting, so. Anybody have any questions on? Greg, did you have one question you wanted to?
No. I believe after Vision 202, we'll probably deal with that.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see. Got to get back in here now. Okay, now I believe we're coming to the next item, Dan, which is the Freedom of Information. Item D is, 9D is our Freedom of Information request.
I did get a question from one board member talking about how he responded. I think it was DuPage policy. From what I remember, they had asked for they had asked a question. They didn't ask for a specific document, and so I had informed them that FOIA was not asking questions. If there was a specific document, they needed to be asking for that. And I'm not sure whatever they would have asked for, we could have shared, but I just let them know that FOIA is not asking questions.
Is that takes your question?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So then our, on 9E is public comment follow-up. We had none last month, so we'll follow up next month. And that brings us to item 9F, which is the superintendent's report.
This report is actually harder than you may realize to put together every month. As you know, all the principals do an incredible job of sending out every Sunday an update of the incredible things happening in their building. Jenna does a great job on a monthly basis after the board meeting that Friday, getting all the information out to celebrate. And so what we do is we ask the principals, kind of just pick 2 things you'd like us to highlight. And so they've included those in this document, so it's not meant to be inclusive. It's just the 2 things that they really wanted to bring to your attention for the board meeting, in case you didn't have a chance to read their actual email that they sent out. And so, as we know at the elementary level, and it's true for all levels, but we really want to build that kindness and giving to others. And so what they wanted to celebrate is they kicked off their annual kindness challenge at LES. They've got a lot of activities there to really show what pride and positive things can happen from helping others. And then also Student Council joined in the challenge by hosting a Sharing is Caring collection, which included collecting things like warm winter items and a sharing connection such as new socks, coats, gloves, and mittens for those students of greater need. At the junior high level, they wanted us to highlight the the Science Olympiad competition. Listed there, you can see a number of our students that excelled and in the areas in which they excelled. And they had their first semester honor roll, and so they were proud to be able to share that 77 6th graders, 66 7th graders, and 85 8th graders either were on honor roll or high honor roll, and by meeting a GPA of 3.5 through 4.0. And so we're really For those in the back of the audience who are adjusting, who got the assistant soup job, they may not realize yet that when we say 77, 66, and 85, that is almost percents, because we've got about 100 students per, and so it's just unbelievable that that high of number of students have read those high levels of achievement. At the high school, they wanted us to acknowledge the congratulations for the Illinois Student Assistance Commission and the state scholars listed. Those were those students that were recognized, and then a whole lot of winter activities in terms of holiday tournaments, either that we hosted or that our students were able to go to participate in. And then district-wide, it's always hard to believe we're talking about kindergarten registration for next year, but that is so hard for us to be able to estimate. And so, as you recall, we have a slight dip this year in kindergartners. We don't know if that's the new trend, but we definitely want to get those numbers sooner rather than later so that we can get parents connected with us and then also be able to plan how many new students we're going to have for the new year. So, busy time, always seems to be a busy time, but these are some of the highlights that occurred in the last month since our last board meeting.
Anybody have anything to add? I'll just add kudos to the artists and to the artwork presented in the on the winter art show that was on the website. It's a great way to do that. I imagine our communications coordinator helped with that, but that was good to see. Anybody have anything else? Okay. And that will bring us to item 10, which is our committee reports. 10A, Facility Master Planning did not meet. 10B, Finance.
The Finance Committee met earlier today, and we discussed a number of topics and added an agenda item for the future meeting.
Great, okay, thank you. 10C, Policy did not meet.
We didn't meet, but we did have a robust conversation about cell phone policy 7:190.
Okay, and robust is good. 10D, Vision 202, we're meeting
As
tomorrow.
mentioned earlier, we have a team, we call the facilitating team. It's really a group of administrators, teachers, parents, classified staff that come together to design what Vision 202 will look like for this upcoming year. We have our first meeting tomorrow with the 13 individuals we've included in the board packet. Included in there was a time period that the board actually had listed out specifically what they wanted from that group. It was a rather lengthy document, so I tried to paraphrase. And so if for some reason I'm missing the intent from the board, I listed the facilitating team. We'll communicate with the district's accomplishments. We will gather feedback that reflects a broad base of the community perspective, and then give a recommendation to the board. So we'll have our first meeting tomorrow. We'll kind of give an overview of what we've done in the past. I think the biggest lift is going to be able to say, like, what do we want to ask? What we don't want it to be is a newsletter verbally done. We don't want to spend most of our time at these meetings talking. We want to share, as we have in the past, about 45 minutes of information. We want as many people who are willing to attend to be able to kind of give us some direction as to what works, what doesn't work, what should we focus on, what would you like to see differently, what would you like to see the same in the organization. And so the 13 of us will work really hard to figure out what types of questions we'll have, and then once we have that, how many meetings. There's been years that we've had as many as 5 meetings. I'm not sure that we need that at this particular stage, but that's what the team's going to have to figure in these next few meetings. For those 2 members, Greg and Pam, I think you're on the committee, additional things to share?
No, just that, I think we talked, was it last month or November, I can't remember now, but about the community engagement. I think that's policy 810, if I'm not mistaken. But the original charge was of Vision 202 was to hear, define community aspirations, desires, and priorities, obtain relevant perspectives that build on previous planning, and involve a broad-based group of 202 citizens in dialogue and deliberation, engage the community in the future of District 202, and build on an ongoing process to strengthen trust, communication, and collaboration. And unless anybody sees any different, I think that charge statement would still pertain and kind of be the goals. And the purpose was to form a broad-based team of community and staff members to solicit stakeholders' hopes, ideas, and suggestions, and engage in meaningful dialogue, as Dr. Filipiak summarized before. So, it says we should look at those those goals every time we're going to have one of the community engagement sessions. So if you're in agreement, I think those are the charges that we'll present then tomorrow night to the group. Greg, did you have anything to add on?
We've had lengthy discussion on this. I'm not certain I can add any more to it
Okay.
at this time.
Okay, all right. And that's, all right, thank you. Let's see, so now we're at item 11, board representative reports. 11A, Home and School Organization is meeting this Wednesday, and I believe it's my turn, so I volunteered to go for this month, or this quarter, I guess it is. 11B is the IASB delegate to board. Did you have anything? I had a couple things, just, we got a reminder that the DuPage Division meeting is March 5th, and if you're interested in going to that, it's from 6 to 8 at Addison Trail High School, I believe. If you didn't get something, let me know, and we need to let Marilyn know. So we'll do another reminder before then. The presentation is on preparing students, graduates for a changing economy. So talking about their learning experiences that are meaningful and they can connect to the future. So that's the topic for that one. So we'll do a follow-up on that.
What was the date again?
That is March 5th from 6 to 8. March 5th, yes. And then the other thing we talked about is our meeting with new board workshop in May, and I've narrowed it down. I heard from everybody but one, and if everybody can write this down to save the date for May 19th, that was the first choice. May 14th, second choice, but we'll go with Arlana is keeping both of those available, but I told her to, save May 19th for us. And the earliest that I got feedback on anybody could meet, and Kate, I guess, was 5 o'clock. I don't know if that's...
I'm not able to. I'll send you some follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I work till 6 usually.
Okay, so, I mean, if we can change the time with her, that's not a problem. I just, that was the earliest everybody else responded, but if 6 will do it, then that's when we can start, so.
I work till 6. I'll send you some
Okay,
follow-up.
all right. Okay, we'll see what we can do. All right, that's all I had for that. Intergovernmental, 11C, the meeting summary is in the board books. 11D, Lend met last Friday, we had a Zoom call last Friday, and that summary of the council meeting is also in board books. And Lisle Education Foundation, 11E, approval of another grant, so that is also included in board books if you had any questions. Okay, 11F, SASA did not meet, and I think has a meeting this.
Yeah, this Friday at
This-
6:30.
Okay.
Though it appears I do not have access to SASED in my board books.
We could talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Brings us to item 12, which is agenda topics for future board meetings, and we talked about bringing the policy 7190 and also 7180 to review and have a first reading next month. And anything else for? Okay. If nothing else, then I enter item 13. I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, performance, discipline, compensation, or dismissal of employees.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, could we please have a roll call?
Ms. Foster?
Aye.
Mr. Nagler?
Aye.
Mr. Lesniak?
Aye.
Ms. Domenico?
Aye.
Mr. Helderly?
Aye.
Ms. Sims is an aye, and Ms. Ullman?
Aye, thank you. So we will adjourn to closed session at 8:49 PM. Thank you.
Mr. Markey, please come down to the podium.